There are people who grew up in the same house I did, who remember laughter, warmth, and kindness. And for them, maybe the memories are lighter, the stories softer. But my experience was not the same. While they were away building their dreams, I was living a different kind of reality, one that quietly shaped me in ways no one could see from the outside. This is not a call for blame, nor a plea for sympathy. It is simply the truth of a younger me, who simply wanted to feel as loved, as safe, as seen as everyone else, can finally be heard. My hope is that, one day, those whose memories feel lighter will understand why my voice stayed quiet for so long, and why I need to share my part of the story now. I sensed I was set apart long before I had language for it. But around 5, old enough to notice, too young to defend myself, the difference sharpened into certainty. In preschool, while other children talked about their parents with ease and warmth, I often stayed quiet, unsure of how to explain what I barely understood myself. At home, small moments made it obvious, the way I was spoken to, the way I was treated. In moments of anger, my beginnings, things I had no control over, were sometimes thrown back at me, turned into weapons that cut deep. One day, said it out loud, "You're not really one of us, you were just taken in." I didn't fully grasp the weight of those words, but I felt them. They echoed inside me, creating a quiet ache I couldn't name. I was just too young trying to understand why love felt like something I had to earn. And that kind of truth, when handed to a child so young, changes something deep within. And worse, there were heartbreaking judgments cast upon the woman who gave birth to me, assumptions spoken with disdain, words no child should hear about their mother, as if her story could be defined by shame. But no one truly knows who she was. Her identity remains unknown, even to the hospital. So how could anyone claim to know her story, let alone label her something no one can truthfully say she was? She may have been young, scared, and alone. And whatever her reasons were, she still gave me life. That should have been enough to offer her a little grace. Her presence terrified me. I learned to read the air, the tone, the silence that came before the storm. Even at a young age, I knew what fear felt like, how it sat in my chest, heavy and cold. Anxiety, shame, humiliation, and sadness became companions far too early. The pain wasn't always loud, but it was constant. Words became wounds. Touch wasn't always gentle. And in that house, I learned how to shrink myself just to survive. I grew up in a house where the walls held stories no one ever cared to ask about. On the outside, everything appeared ordinary, meals were served, school days passed, and a roof sheltered us from the rain. From the outside, it looked like I had what every growing child needed, boxes checked, needs met, a life that made sense. But inside those walls, where smiles were practiced and silence was the price of peace, I was quietly unraveling. What the world couldn't see was the loneliness behind the routines, the aching in a child's heart that longed not just to exist, but to be truly seen. The siblings I grew up with had moved to another city for university. They were kind, loving, and full of energy whenever they came home, and they always made sure to visit for the holidays. Their laughter filled every corner, their smiles lit up each room, and for a brief spell the house felt lighter, almost like the one I used to imagine. But when they left again, so did the light. They never stayed long enough to see what happened in the quieter months, when the laughter faded and the shadows returned. They never saw what I went through. They didn't see how often I was made to feel like an outsider. They never heard the words that pierced through my young heart. Words that reminded me, over and over, that I was different. Not always directly, but in the tone, the distance, the silence. I want them to know, I never blamed them. They were living their own lives, unaware of what I faced when they were away. How could they have known? No one ever told them. I never did. And though I am grateful for what was given to me, I cannot pretend it filled the space where love was missing. A truth I've carried silently for far too long. I survived, not because it was easy, but because I had to. Neighborhood kids mocked me on the playground, and every cruel word carved itself into my tender spirit. Even in play, I wasn't safe. I was a target, a reminder to others of a story they didn't understand and didn't care to. I learned far too young that joy could be stolen, and that even under the sun, some hearts are left in the dark. There were moments when I questioned everything. Why I was even here, why I had to carry so much pain at such a young age. Why did I have to endure such mistreatment? Was this the price I had to pay just to be kept alive in a home I thought would be safe? Were the whispers true, that adopted children are a curse to a family? But those were the thoughts of a wounded child searching for meaning in pain. I wished someone could see past the surface and recognize the sadness in my eyes. Because my childhood wasn't normal. It wasn't safe. Still, I held on. I carried gratitude in my heart for being taken in, for the roof over my head, and for the chance to grow. But that doesn't erase the truth. I was wounded by the very people I looked to for love. The silence I kept was heavy, but I bore it, for years, until I found the strength to begin healing. A child should never be made to feel ashamed of the circumstances of their birth. I was just a child longing to be seen, heard, and loved, for who I was, and not for where I came from.